All right, I think we are live. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this month's October's virtual board meeting. Joining me this evening are our Vice Chair, Saba Beretta, Steve Bumbau, Naomi Shelton, Leah Crucy, Ricardo Ganjum, and Jim Sandman. And for her second official appearance, Michelle Walker-Davis, our no longer brand new Executive Director. Please know everyone on the board, as well as anyone who's presenting this evening, your video is optional. Thank you, board members, for having yours on. We're going to begin tonight's meeting with a special hearing, much like last month's. This time we'll be hearing from parents that are members of our advisory group, the PALC, as we refer to it, which stands for the Parent Alumni Leadership Council. PALC parents provide DC PCSB staff with input and advice on various proposed policies and practices. They lend us their perspective. Most importantly, we get to hear from them concerns, priorities, experiences that they have with public charter schools and public education overall. So first of all, I want to start by thanking each member of the PALC for serving. I know that's not an insignificant amount of your time. No, it's also not easy juggling family duties and attending PALC meetings, although hopefully virtual meetings make it a little bit easier. But we really appreciate it and we value your input, and the work that the PALC does helps to ensure the future success of our students and our schools. We'll begin this evening by hearing from, we'll be hearing from 4 parents, I believe. And we'll begin this evening with hearing from Shaniola Arowolaju. Bree, if you would unmute her, and would love to hear from you.
Good evening, how you doing?
Hi, how are you?
I'm
Thanks
well,
for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me. So excuse the background noise. I have the kids and they're trying to quiet them down.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you for joining us, and we'd really just love to hear how the school year is going for your children and you.
Okay, so I wrote something up, so I'll just read from it. Good evening, my name is Shaniola Arowolaju. I'm a Ward 5 resident and a member of the DC PCSB PALC board. Most importantly, I'm the proud mom of 3 Kipsters. Ayomide is 10 and in the 5th grade at Kip AIM Middle School Academy. Adebayo is 8 and is in the 3rd grade at Kip Heights Academy, and Ayo Damola is 4 in pre-K 3 at Discover Academy, all located at the Kip Douglas Road campus in Southeast DC. Virtual learning has definitely been an adjustment for both me, my kids, both my children and I. Luckily, I'm fortunate enough to have a job that allows me to work from home full time, so I'm able to assist with keeping my kids focused and on task. The downfall is the struggle of juggling 3 kids at different stages of their education and my full-time job at home myself, because my husband is essential and has had to go into work every day since the pandemic started. Virtual learning for us overall has been going well. I must admit, I was quite nervous and had a bit of anxiety at first because, of course, none of us knew what to expect. But I have to give credit to my kids' school for the constant communication, clear guidance as to what to expect from virtual learning and what is expected from the kids during virtual learning as well. The school provided electronics, school supplies, and have come up with creative ways to engage and foster learning during this unprecedented time. The individual teachers and the administrators at all 3 schools over-communicate, which I think is both reassuring and refreshing, especially during this time. The flexibility of my work arrangement, coupled with the diligence and dedication of the school, has been paramount to my kids' success in the virtual learning space. While it isn't perfect or ideal, they are striving, and I haven't lost all of my hair yet. Now, I understand that not all students and parents share the same experience as I during this virtual learning period, and that could be for a whole host of reasons, but that does concern me. I think the transition to virtual learning has been a bit easier for me due to my constant engagement in my kids' education. I'm a member of the Parent Advisory Board on all of my kids' schools, and I sit on all the PTAs, in addition to a couple other educational organizations' parent boards as well. Now, as you can imagine, I spend a lot of time engaging and advocating in these arenas, but it is a bit overwhelming. But being as engaged as I am, I feel it has benefited me and afforded me with some sense of knowing in the arena of the unknown, and a lot of parents are thriving in the space of the unknown. I think That is the lesson I've taken from this time, taken away from this time. If we can find a way to get more parents engaged and find creative and flexible ways to make it convenient for parents with situations, I think that would help bridge the gap and build trust between parents and the schools. What I would like to see in education more broadly moving forward is trust building and transparency. I've come to realize that the trust I have in my teachers at my school, a lot of parents don't have that same trust at their school. I feel this lack of trust is what I believe is spearheading some of the issues many parents are having and experiencing during virtual learning. I don't know that I can pinpoint how to rectify this trust issue, but I know as we move forward to reopening plans, if we don't find a way to build trust between the parents and the schools, I'm not sure how it's going to happen. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Board members, we have a couple of parents speaking this evening, but I'd love to open up if there are any questions for Ms. Arowolaju.
I want to thank you for sharing with us tonight on this time of day is a really crazy one for all of us. I'm trusting that my daughter is keeping herself safely busy right now. So I just appreciate that. And hearing about all your involvement is inspiring and whelming and all of that. So I'm thrilled to hear that your experience has been positive. I was hoping you could share with us a little more about what you think increasing transparency and trust could feel like, and if you've noticed kind of trends, if that's easier or more difficult from what you've heard from other parents at different grade spans and different kinds of really different grade spans at different age groups. You've got 3 different kids at 3 different learning ages, and just wondering if you've noticed that from what you've heard from other parents is a similar experience for younger kids or older kids with what they'd like to hear more of from their schools.
So I think it varies. What I feel that the younger kids, there is, that's where like the over communication kind of comes into play because they're babies and they require a lot more attention from the parents or assistants. I think when I was speaking about the transparency and trust and things, I think what makes it difficult now, from what I'm hearing from other parents, what makes it difficult now is that, okay, you want us to trust you and trust that you're going to, make sure our kids are at least, we can make up what they're missing from being home and that the schools are clean and we have these HVAC systems now, but you weren't doing any of this before. So I didn't really trust what you were saying before the pandemic. And now you want me to put all my eggs in this basket and believe that you're going to keep the bathrooms clean and keep paper towels in there when on a regular basis, when the parent comes to the school, there's no paper towels, there's no tissue, there's no soap in the dispenser, or, my kid wasn't getting the services before. And now when, everyone needs, services to some degree, of some sort, there's this overwhelming need for all of the students in the school. When it was just a small number, you want me to think that my child is going to get the attention that they need now. So I don't know what the answer is. I don't know, and each parent that I've spoken or been in an environment with to be able to hear, they all have different different solutions to that for their specific child and their specific child's needs. I have luckily been at my school since my daughter was in pre-K 3. She's in the 5th grade now. So I think, over time, those issues that some parents may have, I feel like I don't because I've been there for an extended period of time. I know the school, I know the administrators. I can go directly to the people at the top if I have any issues, but not a lot of parents have that type of access in a sense, and not because it's not afforded there to them, but they may not know, they may be scared, they may be nervous. There could be several reasons why a parent doesn't feel like their voice would be heard if they went, that high for whatever reason.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question for you. Again, thank you for joining us tonight. Sounds like you have your hands full with 3 young children at home. It also sounds like you have a lot of experience as a parent in the charter sector. And I wonder if you have any advice for us. Like what could we be doing differently and better? Do you have any thoughts on that?
The charter school board in general, or
the charter school board, what kinds of things do you think we should be focusing on in your children's school in the charter sector? Just, we don't get a lot of opportunities to speak to parents, so I'd love to hear if you have any advice for us.
I think this has been like an overarching thing for me since I joined the PALC. One thing was I didn't really realize that the DCPSB existed in the form that it exists in, and that you all have the type of, oversight that you all have. Now, being a part of PALC for several years, I realized how the relationship between the board and the individual schools, how it is. So I think if you all can, I guess, not advertise, but maybe put out to parents what you all can do and the extent of what you can do and how that relates to their individual schools, I think that would help, bridge that gap some for some parents in the charter school sector. That's all I can really think of off the top of my head.
Thank you.
I'll just say that's a great one, and I know it's one that we've talked a lot about, which is parents are busy, and oftentimes it's just as we all know, as all of us parents, it's oftentimes takes a lot just to keep track of your kid's school. Never mind think about who the authorizer is and what role they have, but it's a good reminder to us that we need to keep working at improving how we communicate about what we do and how it intersects with schools and how we can be helpful to parents. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
Great. Well, I know we've got a few other parents on the line, so we'll let you get back to kids and enjoying the time with them. Thank you again for joining us for tonight's call.
You are so welcome. Thank you.
Bree, I believe next on the list is Mara Gasworth. All right, I think I see you.
Can you hear me? Yes.
There we go. We can hear you as well. Thanks for joining.
It was like a weird entry in. I wasn't prepared for that. So, hi, I'm Maura Gasworth. I'm a Ward 5 parent as well, and I have a 3rd grader at Two Rivers at Young and a 5th grade son at Basis DC. And so I would share our experience, like as my colleague said before, like the adjustment, right, to this virtual learning. And I kind of thought of my comments in 2 ways. Like the spring felt very difficult to manage in some ways. There was a lot of changing very rapidly, right? One thing worked, but then the schools were like, and both my kids were at Two Rivers at Young in the spring. So it was like, here's one schedule, and then 3 weeks later it changed because things weren't working and the schools had to adapt. And I do want to say the communication we received from the schools was really good. And I've only seen communication improve. If anything, sometimes so much communication, I have to sometimes pause and say, what do I need to pay attention to? Is this relevant to my child, my grade, right? Like, because they're over communication. And I appreciate that, but it can be a lot at times. I think we've also seen your teacher really helps guide some of this and lead the charge of how the school's going. And some teachers are just jumped in a different way than others. And I think that we've been very lucky with the teachers our kids have had. I would also say our kids have had very different experiences based on how they have adjusted. And we've had to then adjust for that, right? I have a child who's very extroverted and really missing that social emotional. So how do we build that into her day? First, my son who loves this and was like, I could do this all the time forever. And we have to take a step back saying that's not our approach forever. I would also say now this year we have 2 schools. And so how have we managed to kind of understand 2 different curriculums, 2 different ways that they're doing async work, 2 different platforms. And I think that's been a very big learning curve for us. Again, both my husband and I work from home, so we have that ability to be here and to support during the day. And we feel both of our kids are getting a good mix of asynchronous learning as well as live group instruction. Of course, we love more live, but we very much understand that they need to meet all the kids in their classrooms needs, and there has to be that balance, and the teachers need time to prep and step away themselves and really take time for their own self-care and planning. both our schools provided technology for all the students, and that's really been helpful so that we're using the same stuff that school is. Supplies have been available, right? Like pick up to get the supplies they may need for art class or for their math. We picked up like the textile pieces for the math curriculum at Young over the weekend. And I think that's going to be really exciting that they can all use that rather than coming up with household items. I would say I've always been a room parent for my children. And so I think being engaged before all of this happened has been very helpful to remain engaged with both the school and teachers, but also the fellow parents within my kids' class, right? How can I reach out to say, how are you doing? And us share like, how are you doing this math? Where are you guys struggling? And kind of sharing lessons learned of how we're managing this at home. I think navigating a new school, it's figuring out how do I make those connections to other parents? How do I find maybe parents who are within our geographical area whose kids are now at basis, right? So trying to figure out that and navigate it differently than when we would have had a back to school night and I would have said, oh, hi, how are you? And introduced myself. So figuring those things out. Both schools have asked for a lot of surveys and I've really appreciated the surveys, both from like getting our feedback and then specifically how they've shared that data, how they have relayed that in the town halls that they've both held and said, here's what we're hearing. We've heard you, here's how we're adapting, and use graphs and visuals that really shows that they are taking our feedback to heart and how that is making plans moving forward. I think more broadly is one thing I say is keep this open communication and figuring out how do you continue to share with parents what changes are being done and why decisions are being made, continuing to keep us involved in the decision making. I know we all get a lot of surveys, but I think that they are helpful. And then maybe after all this, have all the schools share what are some of the lessons learned that all the schools didn't learn that they could share across schools, right? So some of that peer-to-peer learning that I think some schools have certain things down and other schools, they're still learning it. I even see that within our two schools where I'm like, okay, this is going really well for my third grader. Here's where maybe it could be adapted for my fifth grader. But again, building those relationships with the school, I think that they could all really help impart that knowledge across the charter school system. I know I just shared a lot fast. If you guys have any questions, I apologize. I was also trying to mindfully have dogs barking and children as well.
You're the perfect public witness. You capture so much information in a short period of time. I'll again open it up to board members. Naomi?
Yes, well, good evening and thank you for that synopsis. It's great to, like Steve said earlier, to hear directly from parents. So just wanted to get a little more information about the family and community engagement that the school has been doing and whether or not there have been any opportunities presented to, have some type of social interaction or anything for the students. So from both sides, your kids and from your perspective.
Yeah, so I would say with Two Rivers at Young, one thing that they have done is parent listening sessions. So starting off with kind of talking about our mission, why we're all there, and then we all do breakout rooms and kind of share what is going on, how are things working. They also did one of those before school started for the students. And I signed my daughter up and she got into a breakout room with a teacher and they talked about what worked in the spring, what would they like to see different, maybe going into the fall. She shared, I want to be able to do art. I want my art class. And how do we incorporate the specials, for example? There hasn't been as much in terms of outside of school. I think that's been a lot on the parents and how do we build that and do that safely. With BASIS, I will say the fifth grade, because BASIS starts at fifth grade, there has been a really concentrated effort to figure out how do we get these fifth graders who are all coming from different schools across the city and different areas, how do we get them to learn each other, right? It's really hard on a screen and their class isn't this small, right? It's like 25 kids. And so they have offered some opportunities like going bike riding with a teacher, or I think they did a hike at the beginning of the year. And some of the parents have started also saying, well, let's meet at Lincoln Park and we'll all be in this corner and try to engage in those scenarios. And then they've also offered their after school extracurriculars. So we encouraged our son to pick some, get involved, even if it's not something you would have done if you were in class in the school. I want you to be doing something to start meeting other people at your school. But again, it's also figuring out what is the activity and can we make it? Because some have been limited numbers, but they have tried to offer some suggestions. And they recently mentioned with basis being fifth grade, it's pretty considered a middle school, high school, that if they aren't the first ones to go back, the older kids, right, that maybe they would make the classes a little bit smaller. So there would be this type of engagement better when you're in the classroom, and you could maybe see everybody rather than scrolling when it's 25 kids. So they're thinking of how do they change the classroom size to account for some of this engagement piece that's lacking right now, based off of parent feedback on the surveys that they ask us to fill out.
Can I pick up on that last point? And it just I wonder if and how conversations have begun or been had about reopening strategy or possibility of reopening, and what indicators, what rubric one would use to decide.
Well, Two Rivers told us last week that we are remote through January after completing a survey, and then they showed us the data. And it was really lined out really nicely, like that this was a difficult decision, but how many teachers felt safe versus didn't feel safe, parents, and then they broke it down by demographics of families, like what families felt safe versus going in, then by grade. It was really fascinating, the data that they actually showed us, and it makes a lot of sense. And then they've already talked about how do they start maybe with the preschool kids and move in back into the classroom and what that would look like. And then Basis has also shared that they started bringing some kids back in for support in the classroom, but you're not getting taught. It's there if you maybe live in a home that there's not a lot of space for virtual learning. There's maybe 5 kids in the or your parents are first responders, and then you're having a difficulty, maybe you have an IEP. So our son didn't meet those, and I didn't want to take a slot of someone who maybe needed to at least be in the classroom out of their home to learn. And so this Basis has talked about, can we open that up, or can we make the classes smaller, knowing that we probably will not return in person right away. And there's been a lot of discussion about Basis's building too. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it. It's an office building. Yeah. So it's got some different challenges than it may be that my Two Rivers at Young School would have, based on a brand new building that's been renovated, right, with a lot of outdoor space. So I hear these different challenges very differently from both of my children's schools.
Yeah, it's a great microcosm of, I think, the conversations that are happening across our very diverse set of charter schools. So,
exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Ms. Gasworth? I know you answered them all in the first 90 seconds, which we very much appreciate. Fantastic. Well, thank you again, both for your participation on the PALC, but also for joining us this evening and sharing your experience.
Yes, so thank you guys so much, and we appreciate you having us and hearing from our perspective. So thank you.
Great. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Next up is Andrea Jones.
Yes, hi, good evening.
Hi, cool. Can we hear you?
I was.
Oh, much better. We can hear you now.
Okay, somehow I logged off and it just told me I was rejoining, so.
Okay. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Sure. Well, my name is Andrea Jones. I am a Ward 8 parent, and I'm a member of the PALC board. I'm also a special education advocate in my community. I have 3 children in school and 1 infant. I have 2 daughters, 10th and 4th grade. They both attend KIP. Well, my oldest daughter's KCP, and my 4th grader is at the Learning Center. And I have a son who's pre-K 4, and he attends a DCPS school. So in the beginning of the pandemic, I honestly assumed that this was a temporary thing and a temporary state of emergency. So I wasn't as prepared for this long-term online learning. But my daughter's 4th grade school, actually, they had the best communication out of the 3. They had really quick follow-ups. They gave me plenty of school supplies, just above and beyond just pencils and paper, but just things for the home that can kind of help turn our little home into a school and help with my daughter, because she does have an IEP. I appreciated that we still had IEP meetings, and we were still able to modify her IEP to kind of fit into this online learning world. I have heard from other parents that their services were not being provided. So I was very fortunate that my daughter's school went above and beyond to make sure that her IEP goals were still being met, and they were still, her services in the IEP was still being met as well. The one thing that I don't really agree with is the timing of the times of the school. Really, because my oldest daughter, excuse me, she is in 10th grade. She starts her day at 9 a.m. and her last class is over at 3:50. And she has 10-minute breaks and then like an hour for lunch. And I've talked to a lot of parents that homeschool before COVID, and they were telling me that their homeschools don't last that long. Their homeschools are usually 8 to 12, and then, you know, they have other different activities. I think that a lot of the schools try to take like the school and put it into the parent's home. And again, you know, I'm saying this, I understand that this was a pandemic that nobody saw coming. So I know, you know, they had to react quickly, but even in that, you know, I didn't receive any surveys. There wasn't, to me, there didn't seem to be a lot of parent and, you know, engagement as far as when the school's going to be reopened, like why. It was just kind of like, okay, this is what's going to happen. So that's another thing. I understand that KIPP is a large school, it has a large attendance, but it just seems like I received information regarding how to use Zoom and self-care and things like that. But as far as like maybe having a committee for the parents to kind of make their voices heard on the reopening and how that looks, I just didn't receive that type of feedback. So that's, you know, one thing that I just wanted to be a little bit more involved, especially with my children returning, especially with me having a special needs child. Like, how would that look in the classroom? Because it would be very difficult for her to keep on a mask for the entire day and things like that. So I wanted to be a little bit more involved in that. But overall, the experience, even though it has been hectic, I really appreciate the effort that the teachers made at the schools.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Sure.
Board members, any questions for Ms. Jones?
Hi, Ms. Jones. This is Saba Beretta. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and sharing your thoughts. I would like to hear just a little bit more about your experience with having a student with an IEP, and please, as much as you feel comfortable sharing. But I know that's a big concern we hear from a lot of parents, and so just, is it more touch points? Are you hearing from the school more often? What do you think have been the things that the school has done to make sure that the IEP is being carried out that you think other schools should learn from?
Yes, there's a lot more touch points. So I'm in touch with her behavioral therapist and her speech therapist quite often. They send emails, texts, and we just kind of arrange the services around her online learning schedules, or they do push-in. So they actually get involved they go into the classroom and kind of give her services through the classroom setting. So I think they, really kind of stepped out the box. Like I said, I've had other parents where they, the IEP just kind of fell through. And I think it's just not stepping outside the box and kind of using the tools that they have, but it's not perfect. It can get overwhelming for her being at the computer screen for so long. So they have managed to give her breaks more often, even though it's not in her IEP, they still allow her to have more breaks and things like that. So it's been it was difficult at first, very, very difficult, but she started to transition pretty well. So now we're just kind of working with transitioning back to the classroom because she has a hard time transitioning, period. So they're actually already working on that now that we have a return date of January 8th. So I'm already meeting with them to see what that looks like. So I just appreciate it, their forethought in everything that they're doing.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Ms. Jones, thank you so much for sharing your experience. I did want to ask you a little bit about what you're hearing about student assessments and feedback on student performance in terms of both your high schooler and your elementary school student. The other thing, and then I have a follow-up question just in terms of, you mentioned the amount of time that they're spending online. I'm also curious to know a little bit about, are there, beyond the school day, how much time are they spending on schoolwork beyond that? I'm curious based also on my personal experience with my kids. So just would love to hear a little bit about what you're experiencing.
Sure. As far as assessments, that was one thing I was concerned about, especially like with the ANET and PART, because for my younger daughter who has the IEP, I was really, really concerned about that and how that would look for her, because this would have been her first year taking it. But I haven't heard anything, and I haven't heard that they had any testing or anything like that. As far as the work, I know KIPP has a bit of a different approach to like homework. They don't really assign anything outside of class unless it's a project or something like that. So a lot of the work that they do it within the classroom time frame. If there is something that they did not complete within that time frame, then of course they have to complete it by a certain time. But my younger daughter gets a little bit more time than the rest of the kids for that. So as far as like testing, assessments, that conversation has not been had. And also, yeah, you know, it's interesting. I was just thinking about that. Like, I haven't heard anything about testing, so I'm not sure what that's going to look like.
Great, thank you so much.
Ms. Jones, thank you. I want to echo the gratitude from my colleagues here for you joining us tonight. Could you share more about what more you would like to hear from, particularly, I think, KCP for your older child, for requesting information and input from parents?
I just want to make sure, you know, KCP is very interesting to me. And I'll just leave that on the table. As far as like communication, I just wanted to, again, be more involved. I know it's a high school, but even then, I don't see a lot of things where even the kids can get involved with the survey. Like the last parent was saying how they had something for the students and the teachers had focus groups and things like that. That's just not done. We just kind of get an email and say, hey, this is what's happening. So I, you know, but that's kind of always been the case even before COVID. So I would like to see more parents engagement and involvement. I know they just opened up the PTA for parents to actually run it, because it was actually run by KIPP staff for a long period of time. So that was concerning to me, but I think this year they started where parents are actually, you know, on the board. And I think, you know, things like that, I think needs to be changed. It definitely needs to be more parent engagement and student engagement as well.
Thank you.
Sure.
Excellent. Any other questions for Ms. Jones? All right. Thank you again, both for being on the PALC as well as for joining us this evening. Really appreciate your feedback. All right, and we have one last parent who's joining us this evening, Ms. Leanne Jacobs. There she is.
Oh, yep. Sorry.
No worries, we hear you now.
Technical difficulties the whole time. So thanks for bearing with me. Good evening to you all. And thanks for the opportunity to share some of our impressions with virtual learning. My name's Leanne Jacobs, and I'm the mother of 2 DCI students, a 9th grader and an 8th grader. As a member of PALC, I usually turn to my community of charter school parents to gather impressions, so you won't only be hearing my views, but I'm happy to share those and take any questions. So some of the impressions that we've been having is that things changed a bit for my students between when DCI started the spring of school, a virtual school. Each kid had about, and they were both in middle school, but they both had about 3 or 4 classes a day. The time blocks were very long, so they had time if they were capable of doing their classwork during those time blocks. But when we switched to this year, it's been super challenging for them. My daughter she's the 8th grader. She has 7 classes a day, 10 minutes between, 40 minutes for lunch. And my son has switched from being a middle schooler to a high schooler, and he has 4 80-minute classes a day with an hour for lunch. And those changes and the times that they are either in a live class or asked to be doing asynchronous working is actually nearly cruel if you think about, as a professional who works from home, how much more flexibility I have. Yeah, I may have a few back-to-back meetings and things like that, but it really does seem unfortunate that in this way the schools feel pressure to act like in school, to have the same bell schedule when nothing is the same for these kids. And I know it's a very different world for parents with lower school children, but that's one thing that I would say for us. And you know, another problem is for special education, which is brought up. I have one child with a 504, and although I must say DCI has had incredible people, staff members working with her. She got a case manager. She has somebody who calls and talks with her 20 minutes a day at the end of the day to help her figure out, okay, what's due, what's a priority, what's important, but don't do it right now. There's a whole framework for her to work in, and that's helped a good deal. So that has been helpful. And yet, as a person with ADHD and a communication disorder, this is not great. But she's also scared to death to walk out the door. So she can't wear a mask. She doesn't feel comfortable wearing it. And she's just like, I'll just stay inside and do the best I can. And so that's a challenge, I think, for all of us, including our SPED teachers and her team that's been amazing for her. One other challenge as a SPED student is she was 3/4 of the way through her testing in March. We shut down. There was no moving forward with any of her testing in April, May, or June. And as you all know, that's so much lost time for trying to get the reports written, schools to be able to react, for parents to get the information of what an IEP, which may flip in my daughter's case or not. And then when we finally were able to get back with the person doing the testing, it was just a Zoom anyway. So we lost a lot of time, and that's hard for her and for the teachers, because they're all trying to work with students who they may never have seen before. Like my daughter has a support where she doesn't have to turn on her camera. So I can't imagine what it's like for a teacher to be filled with a screen with little boxes, as older students. Maybe they'll be in 5 minutes or so, but as soon as they're allowed to take their cameras off, they're off. So I understand the challenges as well. So on balance, I would say virtual school's not that great, but we all know it, and it's here to stay for quite a while. I'm concerned. I do believe TCI what originally was going to do a similar approach that was mentioned by one of the other parents, what was to reach out to families with children who had special needs, that were homeless, that were food insecure, who weren't able to have a parent at home. Not that we engage a whole lot with each other because we're working and the kids are working, but there is that safety factor. They were going to have kids in the building, and similarly not being taught, but being in a smaller group with an adult. They could have food and just have those basic needs cared for, but they weren't able to do that for this first semester. My understanding is they're going to do that for next semester, but I have not heard or I missed the email about what we're doing after the first week in November. We were also asked by PALC to say what we've learned about engagement. And I would say engagement in a virtual situation is even more important, and we don't feel like we have time to do it correctly. We know that advocacy for our students is key, and yet with more than one child and one child, some families, more than one child who has different needs than the other, is that somebody's always getting something more than the other one. And that's a little easier to balance in a non-virtual world. But in a virtual world, we had a problem with one of the teachers in one of my students' class. It's week 8. Failure is all that has happened. There's no engagement. And so I just sent one email asking if the teacher had responded to my child, and got a long email back within 36 hours. But the sentence that disturbed me is, well, I've done everything I can and I don't know what to do for your student. Don't tell me that. Don't tell me that at week 8. You have my phone number, etc. I have not even kicked this up to the level of the principal, which I will. But the point is, something has gone wrong for that teacher. He's not a new teacher, but he's new to the school. So he hasn't gotten the tools he needs to know, hey, read the 504, talk to her case manager, talk to her homeroom teacher. Like, I sent him back 8 suggestions. So that's a time away for everybody. And in week 8, it's a little crazy. So I was going to talk to him tonight, but I'm talking to you guys instead. But I'll be trying to help him as well and advocate with the school for his challenge. Because if he didn't understand how to get help and he's an 8-year teacher, I don't know what else to do. So what would I like to see going forward? The best thing I can do is provide to you a response from a friend who's a public charter school parent of also a middle and high school peoples. And she's also a kindergarten teacher in another one of our public charter schools. And when I asked her sort of how did she feel about virtual school for regular ed students and special ed students, like just share with me. And what she sent me back is, I'd say it's just incredibly complicated. Much like in-person instruction, there is not one size fits all solution to meet the needs of all my students. Students, families, teachers, all need flexibility, especially in scheduling. We need the ability to focus on what is most important and let the other things slide without consequence. One other thing I'll share is, I've got, early high school and middle school, and a lot of our parents in PALC have younger students. I have another friend who has a high school senior who has an IEP, whose school has been bending over backwards to help get this student engaged, and he can't do it. He's not responding. He's failing his classes and everybody's in a panic. And the parents are the most in the panic. What does this mean for this child's future? So the one thing I might suggest is looking at ways for the schools to try and think even that far beyond, because, yes, we'll all get through it, but as families get more stressed, it's just going to be harder. So I don't mean to say that everything's terrible. It's just hard. And I greatly appreciate you reaching out to us, and I will answer any questions you might have.
Well, Ms. Jacobs, thank you so much for sharing that. And as you said, and as your friend and teacher and parent said and quoted, these are really complicated situations, and no one mode of learning or structure or approach. We knew that before the pandemic, that did not, every model didn't suit every family perfectly or every student perfectly, and that's case in point now in this current situation. But thank you for joining us this evening. Board members, we'll open it up for any questions, any follow-on questions.
I don't know, I must have done an either really good job or a really bad job. I'm not sure.
You did a great job. One question I have, I know you said you'd be following up with the particular teacher that you have this challenge with, and that you've may not have spoken with the school leadership yet. But given that we're now at the middle of October and we were virtual for the balance of the spring, when you have raised issues or concerns or needs that you have, what has the response been from the school or school leadership?
Honestly, in the spring, we were just doing whatever we needed to do. This is the first, I did have the opportunity, I must say, that DCI reached out to parents to sort of give some feedback about some of the information that is passed. They opened up, as many schools have, a sort of parent portal, which each of the teachers put more information in, et cetera. So I was able to weigh in on that. And they did have last year a few times where you could meet with the principals and just get on a Zoom call. They'd share some information and you could ask questions. But luckily, I have not had a situation that has arisen that I thought I needed to speak to the leadership about. But this one is, and I don't want to just say that, he's a bad teacher or something. If he doesn't feel like he has the tools, he can't be the only one. And sort of asking them, not only for kids with special needs, but what are they doing to support teachers who are new to their building to understand how to negotiate these things? Are they setting up first year teachers with like fourth year teachers? Or is there some sort of mentoring or something like that? Because I'm sure they did some training in the beginning of the year before school started, but I'm sure check-ins and things like that are as important for the teachers as they are for the students, especially the new teachers.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Any other questions, board? All right. Well, Ms. Jacobs, thank you. Everyone who joined us from the parent community, from PALC, thank you very much. And I hope we'll continue to bring parents forward at future board meetings to hear about what their experience has been in these rather challenging times.
Great. Thank you all for your time.
With that, I think we're going to switch to gears, and we have a few public witnesses who've signed up to deliver public comment. Individuals who are testifying this evening who have previously signed up to testify. So as a reminder, all written public comment is available to the public on our website. And if you didn't sign up by sending your name, for this meeting, you may submit your comments to public.comment@dcpcsb.org, or you can call our public comment line and leave voicemail testimony at 202-328-2660 and select option 2. So we've got, I believe, 2 public witnesses signed up, and if I could call first, James Tandaric. Bree, if he's on the line, if you would unmute him.
Hello, hi.
Hi, we can hear you.
Can
There
you
we
see
go.
me?
I can see your photo.
You can see my photo? Okay. I'm trying to see if you can see me, but maybe that's okay. All right, no worries.
Well,
Jeff.
thank you for joining. You have 2 minutes and we welcome your public comment.
All righty, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is James Tandaric, and I'm an ESL teacher at Center City Public Charter Schools. I'm here to talk about reopening schools and how we should do that as public charter schools. As you probably have heard, DCPS is planning to reopen their schools next month. The big issue is that they didn't really communicate with any stakeholders while they were working on the reopening plans. When it was announced a couple of weeks ago, teachers, parents, students, and principals really had no idea this would take place. I had many teacher friends that work in DCPS, and they were completely thrown off by it. They had no idea it was going to happen or about how reopening would work. It also resulted in a forum the week after in which teachers could not bring up why they were not able to contribute to the reopening plans, as well as this Friday, DC Council is hosting, it's planning a meeting about reopening, but it's closed to the public. So again, teachers, students, parents, any stakeholders cannot actually participate in this meeting. What we have seen is a clear exclusion of stakeholders into the reopening conversation. And really it's appalling and disrespectful, especially to me as like an educator where, you know, I'm teaching virtually and at some point we're going to reopen, but I want to make sure doing it in a way that's safe, but also making sure that my voice is being heard as an educator. We as public charter schools must do better than our counterparts in DCPS. Whenever LEAs start to discuss their reopening plans, they must include us in the conversation, as well as principals, students, and parents. Some of the ways this can happen can be as a public forum where community members can give opinions on how and when schools should reopen, as well as committees that can be formed where LEAs can present their ideas and the community can discuss and provide feedback on it. This should be an ongoing conversation between LEAs and the community. And again, there should be multiple opportunities where the community can provide feedback on the reopening plans since these are drafts and should be reviewed and critiqued frequently. This will take everyone to work together to make sure that schools reopen safely, but allowing teachers in the conversation will ensure the community is given a voice on this pressing matter. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for coming, joining us this evening and sharing your thoughts. That certainly as charter LEAs consider their own timelines for reopening in different capacities, I know that they'll be thinking about how they engage their community. So appreciate your comments this evening.
You're welcome.
Right. Next, we have Sondra Phyllis Gilbert. Bree, if you might unmute Ms. Phyllis Gilbert's live.
She's unmuted.
Good evening.
Hello. Hi, good evening.
I'm Sondra Phillips Gilbert, ANC 6A07, ANC for the Rosedale community. And
thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I wanted to speak on Monument Academy Public Charter School proposed amendment change.
Excellent.
Okay. So I don't know if you still see me, but I'm reading from another screen. So
we can't see you. We can just hear you, but we can hear you just fine now.
Okay, thank you. So I want to say, dear Public Charter School Board members, my name is Sondra Phillips Gilbert, and I'm an ANC 6A07 commissioner in the Rosedale community, where the Monument Academy Public Charter School resides. I'm petitioning the board this evening not to approve the Monument Academy Public Charter School amendment, goals, mission, and bylaws without community awareness and an opportunity to express our concerns and input in these major changes. Due to previous Issues and concerns that have been reported in the various news outlets, in the Washington Post, Monument Academy Public Charter has not shown the Rosedale community that it can be trusted by moving forward to amend its charter by excluding the public and stakeholders in the Rosedale community. They cannot make decisions in isolation. In January 2020 of this year, I, along with a few others, which included the Ward 6 School Board member, Jessica Sutter, were invited to tour Monument Academy. I really felt that Dr. Grant was doing a great job and that we had an open dialogue and working relationship. I informed Dr. Grant, due to Monument's recent problems, that I wanted to have a member from the Rosedale community be included on their executive board so that the community can have input. Dr. Grant told me to submit the name for consideration. In March of 2020, I submitted a letter of a community member that is overqualified and has a background in working with special needs children. I nor the community member heard back from Dr. Grant. After receiving an email from the Public Charter School Board on the proposed changes, I made an effort last week to call Mr. Grant concerning these amended changes and left a message, and it was never returned. Here are some of the questions I have, and I'm sure the community, the families who attend Monument, and stakeholders have questions too. What has been happening at the school since conditional extensions of its school contract were approved in December 2019? Who and what has generated these proposed changes? If a significant portion of Monument students are homeless and remote learning has been in place since the start of the school year, how has remote learning worked for those students? How has notifying neighbors of these proposed changes been rated as non-applicable, given that neighbors identified many problems at the school prior to its contractual takeover by Friendship? The board reported on its Monument proposed changes in its mission statement that says the proposed mission statement broadens the school's targeted population by introducing a focus on students who have experienced significant adversity. The proposed mission statement also uses the phrases child welfare and social service systems instead of foster care system, further expanding the school's targeted population. Monument says the proposed mission statement more closely defines the student body and the families it serves. Per the charter agreement application, the school surveyed families and discussed the changes with staff at an all staff meeting before the school board approved the revision. Does the Public Charter School Board think that not informing neighbors of these changes is okay, given the historical and potential impact of this school on the surrounding neighborhoods? It is my sincere hope that the board will recommend that Monument Academy hold a meeting with its families, community members, and stakeholders before moving forward with these proposed changes. I also want to make sure that Monument Academy works closely with me in allowing the ANC to appoint a member from the community to serve on their board to provide input, concerns, and recommendations from the community as they serve the needs of the children and the families at Monument Academy and the Rosedale community. Thank you for your time and consideration in this matter.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips Gilbert. Appreciate you sharing your thoughts this evening, and timely as we'll have the Monument team before us in just a few moments. You've testified on Monument previously at one of our meetings, is that correct?
That's correct, and you
Okay.
recommended that Dr. Grant work with me, and I really
Thank you.
appreciate that.
I wanted to make sure I connected the name with the face that I cannot see. So thank you for coming before us this evening, and appreciate your advocacy on behalf of your constituency.
Thank you. Our children are so important.
Thank you. All right. Well, with that, I would like to turn to the charter amendment that we want to have a public hearing on this evening, and I'll invite who is Melanie and Quignon, as well as the Monument team. Bree, if you could tee that up.
Hi, this is Melody Sampson, Senior Manager of the School Quality and Accountability Team. This is a public hearing to discuss Monument Public Charter Schools' proposal to amend its charter agreement by changing its mission, goals, and bylaws. The proposed mission is similar to the original mission, but expands the school's target population by focusing on students who have experienced significant adversity. The school requests many changes to its goals, including removing the PARC, English Language Arts, and Math Achievement Goal, and using NWEA MAP for the student progress goal instead of PARC. The school is also recommending to slightly increase and decrease some of the school environment targets. The school also revised its bylaws by decreasing the term length for parent/guardian board members from 3 years to 1, and by incorporating language to be compliant with the Open Meetings Act. Representatives from the school are available this evening to answer the board's questions.
Excellent, thank you. Dr. Grant, I see you. I don't know who else you are joined by, if you wanted to introduce them. And then, oh, I see Tammy Lewis as well. If you want to open up with some starting remarks, and then as you can imagine, we have some questions for you.
I do. Good evening, DC Public Charter School Board members, staff, and other charter leaders and their stakeholders, parents, students, and our community partners. I'm Dr. Jeffrey Grant, head of school at Monument Academy Public Charter School. This evening, I'm joined by Monument Academy's Board of Trustees Vice Chairperson Tammy Lewis. And on behalf of our board chair, Tysley Williams, and our other stakeholders, we would like to thank you for providing this opportunity to amend the guiding principles that will guarantee success for our most important stakeholders, the Monument Scholars. Monument was founded and opened in 2014 by Emily Bloomfield, who had a vision and a goal to improve the lives of some of the most vulnerable members of our city. Mrs. Bloomfield and her partners had a vision of providing a safe, secure, and healthy space for children to learn the content and improve their life skills through ongoing engagement with best practices. The 5th through 8th grade middle school program operates out of the former Gibbs Elementary School in Rosedale and is replete with spaces for learning, meeting, extracurricular activities, and boarding. The school was opened with the following mission statement. Our mission is to provide students, particularly those who have had or might have contact with the foster care system, with the requisite academic, social, emotional, and life skills to be successful in college, career, and community, and to create an outstanding school that attracts, supports, and retains exceptional and caring people. After operating for 5 years, Monument stakeholders reviewed and reflected on our policies and practices. The school worked diligently over the last year to meet the criteria outlined in the conditions set by the Charter School Board on December 16, 2019, for continuance of operation over 5 years, inclusive of the current school year. In addition, we analyzed our data to certify if we have been meeting the school's mission. Monument Academy conducted multiple strategies, surveys, focus groups, interviews with the different stakeholder populations to get feedback on the current mission statement. Thus, we have determined that Monument has been serving students who are deemed at risk under the city government's designation in other categories. We aim to amend the mission statement to be more inclusive of the at-risk designations we serve. Thus, we are proposing this new mission. Our mission is to empower students, particularly those who have experienced significant adversity, including involvement or risk of involvement in child welfare and or other social service systems, with the requisite academic, social, emotional, and life skills to be successful in college, career, and community. In addition, we aim to create an outstanding school that attracts, supports, and retains exceptional and caring people. Through our surveys and analyzing our data, first of all, I want to share that since the school year began 2015-16, our homeless population at that point was at 7.5%, foster care students 5%, and at-risk 82.5%. In the year following, we had 12 homeless students, 10 in foster care, 65 students at risk. In 17-18, we had 31 homeless kids, 6 in foster care, 89 at risk. In school year 18-19, we had 42 homeless kids, 2 in foster care, and 103 at risk. In last school year, we had 29 homeless, 1 child in foster care, and 82, which was 80.4% at risk. In this current school year, under the enrollment that we have right now, 89 fully enrolled, 39 of our children are homeless, with 0 in foster care, and 71.6%, 63 kids being at risk. We have 55 students currently enrolled, 89 students currently enrolled, 55 male, 34 female. 38 of our students from Ward 8, 30 from Ward 7, 8 from Ward 6, 9 from Ward 5, 4 from Ward 2, and 2 from Ward 1. Lastly, our 69 students identified as at risk through the District of Columbia's criteria for at-risk delineation. And then we have 39 with the homeless, according to Department of Social Services and the Virginia Williams Family Resource Center. We are a middle school that serves these at-risk kids, and we want to provide a quality education and social emotional support to a population that is not, it's always, well, we're mobile. We experience that unstable housing, and we have to be open to serve these kids, but we know there's more than just providing a bed. Last year, 50% of our students had a parent who was currently or had been incarcerated. Greater than 55% of our students reported that the students who attended Monument had attended 3 or more schools, not including Monument, since first grade. Greater than 13% of our students have attended 5 or more schools since first grade, not inclusive of Monument. Using this data, our leadership concluded that our school would spend a considerable amount of time stabilizing our students and teaching them how to learn before we can teach them what they must learn. We shall be instituting consistency within their practices and modeling appropriate behaviors to ensure our scholars are equipped to be successful in the classroom long term. Many of our students enter our doors 2 or more grade levels behind. Thus, we have focused on consistent growth measured by NWEA MAP, a research-proven strategy tool that provides a reasonable growth goal for all students. Lastly, we're setting goals for the guaranteeing success through attendance, positive behaviors, and strategic practices. In accordance with DC PCSB's latest goals, guidance for the alternative accountability framework schools, Monument is electing to remove PARC as a measure of achievement, but we're focusing on growth based on the students whom we serve. Our students enter our halls after attending multiple schools, as I stated before. Their experiences have not created the mindsets that will produce those scores in their first years, so we will always be operating from behind. Our students must heal and learn how to be productive students. We will use the map to monitor the growth. For this change lines Monuments, our conditions under continuation when we're looking at the growth goals. It's also important to note the Monument has been administering the NWEA MAP since its founding. The academic goal is established to maintain the growth will occur at a rate that signifies at least 50% of our scholars will make significant gains each year in both English language arts and mathematics. Before COVID, when we walked out of coronavirus or COVID-19, we had implemented the BOI map in the middle of the year map. Our students show in mathematics, of 91 students tested, 57.1% of them met the growth in reading English language arts, and 55.1% met the growth in mathematics. The growth target from that middle of the year to this year, actually, at this year's implementation of MAP, which we've begun, 37.5% of our kids have met the growth from middle of the year. We had a decrease. We know that we went out on virtual learning, but we were making progress. We continued our work by not closing our doors until June 18th, and we began our 3-week summer school program, 4-week extended year program in the summer with at least 40% of our kids attending. Tested to date right now, and we have until the middle of November to assess all of our students on MAP. We have 45 students who have been assessed in MAP and reading English language arts and 67 in mathematics. So when we compare that and we come looking at the growth, because we know we have to close that achievement gap, we looked at how PARC was identifying us. And we saw that the achievement level of MAP was in reading English language arts at 19% and math was at 12.9%. In the year before that, 17-18, reading English language arts achievement was 15.6% and math was 13.5%. That does not tell our true story. We are about growth. Students enrolled in school for only a few months were being held accountable for making 3 university visits or outlining a high school course path. Limiting the roster to full academic year students is consistent with other goals that require a significant amount of time to achieve. Monument strategically schedules field experiences and the visits to universities and colleges conducted in the first 2 months of the school year. We'd have to do those virtually this year, but we're making sure that those occur. We believe that all students must be in school daily in order to receive quality instruction. However, we do acknowledge that many of our students are experiencing unstable housing and or familiar issues that are not easily rectified. When Monument exited the school due to COVID, we were at a 91.2% rate of in-seat attendance. Based on our 5-year conditions, we have to hit 88. We were on that path. We never dropped below 90 for the whole year. We opined that a student being in school 88% of the time will ensure instruction can be implemented at a level that will raise academic achievement and services can be delivered that will positively impact social and emotional well-being. Lastly, this change aligns to Monument's in-seat attendance goal and its conditions for improvement. And we know that we are going to significantly decrease the out-of-school suspension as compared to previous years. The school is focused on decreasing inappropriate behaviors by re-enrolling students year over year and maintaining an environment that will positively impact newly enrolled students, encouraging them to engage in school-supported practices designed for positive behaviors and self-regulation. This year, out of our 89 that we have enrolled our students, 58 have re-enrolled. We also implement a dialectical behavior therapy 2 times per week. We have identified our students remaining in compliance. We have 40 students with IEPs, and we have 4 students with the 504. And then we have 7 students actually receiving support through our SMILE program with 8 potential referrals. Monument is keeping a discipline goal, but switching to an out-of-school rate in order to reflect the work being done to lower the number of schools suspended. We are making sure that our numbers are aligned with those in the same sector at the same rate. We want our numbers to actually be compared to those at the level that we are in terms of our students. So we're also seeking to amend our bylaws to align with the enrollment of students and the engagement of their parents. The parents can serve a 1-year term and still be eligible for additional 1-year terms as long as the student is enrolled in subsequent years. In closing, we want to thank you for giving us this opportunity to ensure tremendous success at Monument. And I would like to just add, and I'm sure Ms. Lewis is going to add, and Ms. Gilbert, who testified today, and I'm sure a lot of you are not aware, but I do have to add this. I didn't want to, but right at the beginning of COVID-19, I received a letter from my doctor, and I had been fighting cancer and had underwent a major surgery in August. So it's not that I was ignoring. And as you saw, Ms. Gilbert, who you're still on the line, I invited you into our school to meet and plan with us. And you were part of my Ward 6 Advisory Committee. You, Jessica Sutter, Chuck Jones from DOES, and Joseph Cotton, who's also highly, I would say, engaged at Rosedale. But again, I had to shut down a little bit, and I am just 2 months removed from major surgery and have just started coming back into school. So I'm happy to be sitting here in front of you, Ms. Gilbert, and my wife and doctor have me on restriction. So I look forward to engaging all of you much more so over the next few months as I continue my healing process.
Thank you, Dr. Grant, and glad you're doing better, and appreciate you giving us such a comprehensive view of where the school is. Ms. Lewis, any comments or thoughts before we enter into some questions?
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. I'll be very brief. I wanted actually to, I thought Dr. Grant did a great job in the details of this proposal, but I wanted actually just to speak in gratitude towards the staff of the Public Charter School Board. I had the pleasure all through last school year to be engaged with Aaron Comferberg and the Alternative Accountability Framework Working Group that the PCSB created to convene all of the alternative schools to talk about accountability and changes that may need to be made to better measure the achievement and outcomes of students in alternative schools. And Dr. Grant and I both participated in those work group sessions. And they were very helpful to us in being able to talk to our colleague schools, PCSB staff, to look at research together and to kind of clarify our instincts that the most valuable information that we can be looking at, especially when the majority of our students arrive to us multiple grade levels behind, making PARCC scores of limited use for us, that the most important thing we can be looking at is growth goals, where we are regularly pushing ourselves to achieve high growth for all of our students, and we are adjusting our program to make sure that happens. So really, I just wanted to say thank you for the thought partnership from your staff, from Aaron Kupferberg and Tanner and others who've really helped us in our thinking along the way.
Great.
I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tammy.
Board members, I'll open it up.
I have a question.
Steve?
So first of all, Dr. Grant, I think I speak for everybody when I say that we're happy to hear that you're on the mend. I think most of us have heard really good news about Monument since you took the helm. So wishing you a full recovery. The kids need you.
Thank you.
I want to make sure, Ms. Lewis and Dr. Grant, that I and the other board members are hearing correctly that PARCC does a poor job of measuring growth if a student is significantly behind on grade level, whereas NWEA MAP does a better job of measuring growth agnostic of where a student is in terms of grade level.
That is correct. NWA MAP is a different type of tool. It assesses the child where he or she is and then creates a growth goal for middle of the year and beginning of the year. So every child has an individual path, whereas PARCC is PARCC. You take PARCC one year, you take PARCC the next year. So it's about achievement, whereas with the NWA MAP, you determine where you are and it sets that bar, and then your next assessment is tailored for the individual's child's performance level so they can measure the growth.
I just wanted that clarification. Thank you.
More than welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Grant, for your update. And I'm so glad to see you strong and on the mend as well. So really pleased about that. And I want to thank you and Ms. Lewis for your effort to continue to evolve the approach for Monument to really meet the needs of our most vulnerable students in the district. And so to that point, a couple questions just to follow up from the ANC commissioner as well. Just in terms of what has been happening, what has the COVID experience been like at Monument? How is distance learning going for the students there? I know you mentioned you have a high number of students who are experiencing homelessness and would like to hear just a little bit about what does student engagement look like at this time?
So we chose to actually have our school year go until June 18th. That way we could have a lens into the home and we can make sure we maintain contact with all of our children. That was from the March 13th date where we informed our families that we would go into a virtual learning mode. We then did the work. Well, our classes were lasting from 11, but teachers came on to 4 p.m. and then had the extended day programs with the support of the house parents, helping with homework, going all the way up until 9 o'clock at night. Because remember, our house parents now were no longer house the children. We made sure that we had a summer school program that was virtual as well, not asynchronous, but every day, 9 a.m. to 12 noon. And that lasted from July 6th to July 24th. Our extended school year program went from June 29th through July 24th. We then made a decision to open virtually. However, we built in benchmark dates to assess where we are in terms of the city, in terms of the COVID itself and practices. So after having extensive conversations with my board, with my stakeholders, we decided to open our school through modification of schedules, not for everyone, but in our head of school parent meetings, we had meetings and shared with parents that we will identify our most vulnerable children through a rubric using the ACEs framework. And we created this, found out who was homeless, who was also identified through McKinney-Vento, who was engaged in child family services. And we created a list of students. We gave a point system. And we started the 7 for 7, meaning that we open our doors for 7 days a week for 7 straight weeks to at least 10% of our students. Currently, we have 9 students who began on October 5th, housed at our school 7 days a week from October 5th to November 19th. I modified the schedules and increased added hazard pay, and also partnered with Elaine Ellis Health Services to provide COVID testing. And we created a bubble. I think a lot of these sports leagues could come and look at us and see how it's done. And we have children engaged, and we have some other parents asking when they can get their children in. But I want to send a big thank you out to my staff who truly believed in what it means to help our parents. We had to get children out of cars. We had to get children out of unsafe environments. As one of the parents stated earlier, although they may be unsafe, it's hard to focus. I have a family, 13 kids. I have another family, 10 kids and 2 adults in a 2-bedroom apartment. The parents were so appreciative of us being willing to open our doors and let's say, let us help you. Let us be partners, truly partners in the work. We continue our parent webinars, our director of family engagement, make sure we engage families. We still offering our meal plans to our families. We're providing school resources for those at home. Our safety and security team, they're making deliveries. Our well-being department, they're doing virtual learning. They're getting their cars, go knock on doors. They would do counseling right there on the front steps if they have to. But again, we are doing the work that needs to be done because again, we want to make sure that our children are not forgotten because unfortunately, some of them already feel that way, and we're not going to contribute to that factor. We're going to be the solution, not the problem.
Thank you for that action and the impact that you're having with those students. I was talking to another service provider today who was sharing really some of the challenges with the concept of NIMBY, right? Not in my backyard. Mm-hmm. And so thank you for really pushing this forward. I do encourage you to try to reactivate the relationship with some of the key stakeholders in the neighborhood as you're now feeling better. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, more than welcome. Again, like I said, thank you all. It feels great to be back in this seat. My board truly has my back. They've been very patient with me. They've been supportive. My team, they helped me up, and it's been a journey, but I feel good, and I'm adding more time onto my days. So thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Grant, and thank you, Ms. Lewis, for your time and presentation this evening. Just wanted to kind of circle back to the point Ricardo just made around engaging with stakeholders. Have you all outlined specifically either activities or what it is you want to map out and working with them to ensure that should you have to go back out or should something change, that you have a set of benchmarks or activities lined up that they can continue to engage with someone on your team as you think through what that stakeholder and community engagement would look like?
Most definitely. Our director of family engagement, we do have our open meetings for parents, but also our community partners. I did speak with one of them, and Jessica Sutter also has emailed me in, but let her know I had to go down for a second. But I wanted to make sure that the Rosedale community feels that we are partners by inviting that team of which Sondra Phillips Gilbert is a member. She and I had a relationship when I was principal at Blow Piers. That's why I told her my doors are open. Even when the doors are open, I offered my building as a place for her to hold ANC meetings. I'm sure she'll attest to that. I even went to the ANC meeting in the community along with a couple of my stakeholders and shared with the whole ANC team that Ms. Gilbert is a valuable partner of mine and that I want to continue to work. So I partner with DPR, Department of Recreation, the library, which are right next door, and invited them along with Ms. Gilbert, as well as some of the restaurants and businesses, Sporties on Benham Road, Kitchen Cray on H Street with our chef team of partner, And I also met with Walk the Neighborhood, and we put together our student government, because our student government is now detailed to identify projects in the neighborhood, which they must do. We had shared that with Ms. Gilbert. Again, COVID took us down. We had a lot of these in place, but we'll make sure that we'll do virtual meetings going forward. I'll reach out to her very soon. Again, like I said, wasn't ignoring, because she knows I accept her calls anytime, and anyone else who calls. But I'll make sure that happens, Michelle.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And I would suggest you and your team go back and listen to the specific things that she outlined in terms of her concerns. Make sure that you're addressing not only the communication, but what it was that she anticipated her engagement level being. I think it's one thing to have partnerships. There's another thing to have engagement where those partners or stakeholders are actively involved. And it sounded like her understanding was that they would be actively involved in working with developing and building out with what you all are doing. So thank you for continuing to engage other partners beyond the charter sector. I think it's exceptionally important that we look at this as a cross-functional endeavor in terms of educating our students here in the district. But I do encourage you to look at the very specific things that she mentioned, because it sounded like it was beyond just the communication or engagement as far as her being able to have access and meetings in your space, but actually being engaged and involved in outlining some of the priorities for the school.
Right, and I agree. Like I said, she did acknowledge when I invited them to the table in January, I was expecting to have a follow-up in April, because we said we do every 3 months. Also, Ms. Lewis is also from the board. I'll let her speak to that in terms of the board has been considering looking at the number of seats on the board and identifying board members. So Ms. Lewis, I mean, we have not put that yet, but that is something that the board has been discussing in terms of the numbers of seats in terms of on our board. Ms. Lewis, did I set you up?
Certainly. We would be very happy to hear of interested individuals looking to serve on our board. We've had a lot of conversations in the board this year about the proper role and size of the board. What's the ideal size to do the best work? We heard, frankly, you all loud and clear in December about your desire that the monument board, the new monument board, remain as active and engaged in our oversight of the school and with the community as you saw us to be over the last several months. So I do think there are going to be some opportunities coming up to add some additional members to our board, and I would certainly welcome having members from the Rosedale community serve with us. I think that would be a terrific addition to our board. I don't know of any of the individuals that are being recommended, but I think we would be stronger with community input on our board, so definitely open to that. If I could.
Oh, go ahead, Deb.
Sorry, I did want to speak to just the bylaws amendment that relate to parent board members. We talked about a lot of other stuff, but just to clarify what we're doing there, we actually ran into a challenge that since their creation, the bylaws had 3-year terms for all board members, the same for parent board members and others, but it created a real challenge because oftentimes a parent board member would be appointed, but then their student would age out of the school. So they could no longer fill the parent board member requirement for the board because they no longer had a student enrolled in our school. So after a lot of discussion, both with stakeholders and the board, what we landed on was having our parent board member terms be 1 year, but that could be renewed for 3 additional years. And that allows us just to have a streamlined situation where we don't have to take votes to remove former board members because they no longer meet the board member requirement. So the intent with this amendment truly is just to make to simplify the administrative procedures for board terms. It also allows all of our parents to be potentially considered as board members, including those who enroll. We do get quite a few parents who enroll their students for 8th grade only or in the higher grades, and they are very valuable. We want to have the 8th grade viewpoint as much as we want to have the lower grade viewpoint in our parent board members representation.
Tammy,
I'm glad. Oh, go, Jim.
I understand the logistical challenge that caused you to make that change, but there can be disadvantages to having a board member who serves only 1 year. It takes a while to get up to speed, and they may not be able to make the same contribution that someone of longer tenure can. What, if anything, do you do to onboard people in a way that makes them productive as quickly as possible, particularly if you have a parent who's an 8th grade parent and you know they're only going to be with you for 1 year? I think the burden is on you to do something to maximize that parent's effectiveness just as quickly as possible.
We agree completely. And Mr. Sandman, I was at your first PCSB board meeting, and I recalled you telling staff that this was your onboarding to the PCSB was the best onboarding to a board you'd ever had. And I listened, and we have done some work on that front. We have actually within the last year, we've held 2 board retreats and a special onboarding session for new members that was separate from the retreats. So what we are trying to work our way towards is really best of class governance structures as much as possible. We are really grateful from the support we've received from from partners on this, but we've really worked hard to ensure that we have really organized onboarding procedures for all of our members, including parent members, that we have created manuals and guides to help our board members understand some of the more complex information that they're asked to review in our meetings. We have also, as I said, made a significant use of retreats. We had a winter retreat as well as a summer retreat. And that allows us to spend more time as a group and go more in depth in matters, and in particular to make sure that we're giving as much time as needed for the questions of any of our board members. Lastly, with parents, I think we've had a special interest in trying to encourage our parent board members to feel as if their points of view represent an expertise that we value above many things. So I think my observation has been on a number of boards with parents. I have seen arrangements where parents are at the meeting, but not necessarily looked to as experts on information. And we really do not want that to be the situation for Monument. So we have tried to go out of our way to offer, one-on-one mentoring for parent board members, pairing them with other board members so that they can, ask questions in a more comfortable situation. I am an anxious person by nature, so I'm not someone who likes to ask questions in a formal meeting, for example. And knowing that, we want to make sure that our parents really have an opportunity to feel valued. That said, I would love to give a shout out to one of our parent board members currently, Ms. Baltimore, who may be in line for chairman next, because she is not shy. She has engaged with us in a really tremendous way this year, and has really been a leader in our thinking on a lot of these issues, including leading a great deal of the mission revision work. So I hope that answered your question. We are trying very hard to be mindful of all of those things. We are also, we were taking steps before we moved into a virtual format to do things like making sure we were offering childcare for parent board members and transportation if necessary. So those sorts of things that could get in the way of participation sometimes.
Thank you. That answers my question completely. Thank you.
I had a question. I'm glad you just mentioned the mission amendment. Obviously, Monument was created to serve a particular population of students in the foster care system, and I think it makes sense that you're revising the mission to better reflect. I appreciate the numbers that you read out, but I would like to just hear, how you think why that change has happened, that you didn't end up serving that particular population of kids, and if the model has had to change at all because you don't have that particular focus on kids involved in the foster care system.
Well, we still have the focus.
Dr. Grant?
Yes.
If you would, I'd love to speak to this first, simply because I was also a founding board member of Monument when we created that mission, and then left for a while before coming back. So I do think I have a pretty unique perspective. And I think most of you all also already know this, that I actually grew up in foster care. I went into foster care when I was 8 years old and was emancipated at 18. So I have a lot of personal kind of experience, which is part of why I was involved with the Monument founding group to begin with. And what I would like to remind everyone is, even the original Monument mission statement did not indicate that the school was intended exclusively for children in foster care. In fact, the mission statement spoke to children in foster care or at risk of entry into foster care. From the beginning, there was a clear understanding that out-of-home placement is not the only place in that continuum that creates risks for students and families. So that's one thing I would underscore, that our mission was always to serve a larger group of students than those only in out-of-home placement. Secondly, during that last 5 years, the actual way that Child and Family Services approaches child welfare in the district has changed. In that period of time, they have prioritized both as an effort towards best practice, but frankly also as a response to the class action LaShawn case, prioritized greatly reducing out-of-home placement for students. So there has been a dramatic, many hundred-fold reduction in out-of-care placement in 5 years. It's something that we should all celebrate, I think. So that is another factor in this, that there are blessedly many fewer children in out-of-home placement in the District of Columbia today than there were 5 years ago. So that said, we are still very much welcoming of students at risk of being caught up in that system. For example, one of my own personal frustrations is we do not capture currently in our at-risk data, even though the actual legislation that defines at risk speaks to not just out-of-home placement, but students whose families are under the supervision of CFSA. We have to date never collected data on those families under supervision. And if you do child welfare work, you understand that the families who are under supervision, but not yet an out-of-home placement, in many ways, those are the most at-risk children and families. So all of that is to say, I think the demographics of who's in care, how we define foster care is important when we think of this. Unfortunately, at the same time we've seen those trends in foster care numbers, we have seen skyrocketing homelessness rates for young people in the District of Columbia. And because we offer a boarding program, we have found that it is very attractive to many struggling families, especially single parents who are in shelter situations, when they understand that they can have a place for their children to sleep through the week and be taken care of. That's an attractive element. So I'll let Dr. Grant follow at the end with any adjustments to programming. I'll say from my vantage point as a board member, what I've seen primarily Dr. Grant doing in revising our programming has been around revisions for rigor, to be quite frank. So what I have seen for the last year and a half have been a tremendous focus on increasing the bar academically, increasing accountability for students themselves, and for staff to raise the bar for our students, and to say, we know that our population of students comes to us with, ACEs scores on average higher than 4. And for those of you who are familiar with ACEs research, we know what that means for long-term outcomes for students potentially. And so I think what Dr. Grant has brought, especially in the last year and a half, is this push to ensure that everyone in the community acknowledges the reality of what those adverse experiences mean in terms of the students' needs when they come to us, but at the same time saying, we have to adjust our programming so that those students can achieve at high rates, despite those adversities they may be experiencing.
Thank you, Terry. Definitely, because we are looking at growth and not achievement. And I hope that your question was answered, Board Member Beretta, by Ms. Lewis. But to focus on the academic program, I'm not looking for excuses, and I'm not going to allow the children to let there be excuses. It's us identifying where the children are and working from there, acknowledging what they need, identifying the resources, identifying best practices, and making sure that those are utilized and implemented at an extremely high level by well-prepared teachers so that we can move our children to the place that they need to be. And our children understand that we're holding them accountable and that we love them through this accountability as well. So again, that's the environment that I choose to create, and all of the children and parents are buying into it, and it's guaranteeing growth.
Thank you very much for the background. And just to be clear, I think that the change in the mission statement makes a lot of sense. And I think understanding, as you explained, the change in foster care policy is really helpful for our audience. Thank you.
You're welcome.
One question I have for you, Dr. Grant, in addition to beyond the noticing to the ANC, as you and the team consider any implications or impacts that this has on the community, what would those be?
First of all, we are going to be a positive addition, as Ms. Gilbert identified in previous years that they had concerns about the type of neighbors that Monument chose to be. We don't have those issues anymore. I'm glad that Ms. Gilbert could not speak to anything continuing from the time I took over July 1, 2019. She was only able to speak to what occurred before my arrival. But again, just being one, we have children who live in the community. So everyone in the community is not living or operating at a level that's allowing them to be successful. The board member that Ms. Lewis spoke to, she's a community member. She lives in the community with her 6 children. And the fact that we are able to support her children and her family, and she can engage, we are there for the children, we're there for the families. So we offer not only the support for children in our classrooms and through our well-being program, we're offering support for the family members, the parents. A number of our students lived in the Pinnacles and Benning Court, those housing complexes that are right next to the school. And our parents come over and receive support, resume building, job training, financial wellness training. We also are able to provide food and resources for them through our partnership with the Flamboyant Foundation, through our the fact that we have a grant through communities and schools. They see how we use our resources and to constantly connect our families with resources and best practices throughout the city. So we're aimed and going to remain to be a great community partner. We take care of our grounds. Ms. Gilbert knows last summer, not only last summer, Ms. Gilbert reached out to me and asked could they use the monument grounds for their Rosedale Day. I said, most definitely. I opened up the parking lot. They had pony rides. It happened on a Saturday. I said, anything you need, because we are Rosedale. So again, we are going to be those fabulous partners where we identify what's needed through the neighborhood. Our Student Government Association has projects that they will be identifying and beautifying the neighborhood, keeping it clean. I had several People come over and ask me if I could add something, or I know the boys probably gonna laugh, something, because the grounds outside of our school that are not on us, where sometimes people like to drop litter, I added it to my groundskeeping contract, so that because it's right adjacent, we can clean it. It's right there adjacent to our property. So what we do is make sure that we take care of it because it's adjacent to us and it's reflective of who we are. So we are being a good community partner through what we do and how we conduct our business and what we offer to our parents and the children and families.
Thank you, Dr. Grant.
More than welcome.
All right. Unless there are additional questions, this matter will be up for a vote next month. So we will see you back in November for the vote.
Thank you very much.
So thank you, Ms. Lewis. Thank you, Dr. Grant.
Thank you.
Thank you all for having us.
Thank you very much.
All right, so that brings us to the end of our public hearing, and we will kick off our public meeting. And if I could start by getting a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda of the DC Public Charter School Board meeting on October 19th, 2020.
Can I get a second? All right, motion and a second. As usual, I need a roll call vote. So Steve Bumbau.
Aye.
Saba Beretta.
Aye.
Jim Sandman.
Aye.
Ricardo Ganjum.
Aye.
Naomi Shelton.
Aye.
Leah Crucy.
Aye.
And this is Rick Cruz, and then aye. The agenda is approved. All right, now next we have up our consent calendar. Would any board member like to remove an item from the calendar for further discussion or state a recusal for the record? If not, I will take a motion to approve the items on the consent calendar.
I move to approve all items on the consent calendar.
Second.
Motion and a second. Okay, roll call vote again. Steve Bumbau.
Aye.
Leah Crucy.
Aye.
Ricardo Ganjum.
Aye.
Jim Sandman.
Aye.
Naomi Shelton.
Aye.
Saba Beretta.
Aye.
And this is Rick Cruz and I. The motion passes for the consent calendar. All right, next up tonight, we have on the agenda a vote for our board leadership. So as a reminder for everyone watching, each of the DC PCSB board members is appointed by the mayor with the approval of the DC Council, and each of us serves a 4-year term and can be reappointed for a second term. Separate from the appointment process, the board annually votes to elect officers from amongst its members who will serve in that role for the following year. I've served as board chair for the past 2.5 years, and I've had the privilege to serve alongside Saba Beretta as vice chair. Could not have asked for a better partner on so many dimensions, and in particular in leading the search for our new executive director, Michelle. Saba has asked to step down as vice chair, but will be remaining on the board to bring her expertise as a teacher, as a Department of Ed, a member of the Department of Education, and as a civil rights attorney, not to mention as a parent. And I'm greatly happy to have her continue her board service in a different capacity. But with that, we need to elect a new slate of board leaders. So I will open the floor for officer nominations for this year's new board officers.
I would like to nominate the following slate of officers: Rick Cruz as chair, Leah Cruzy as vice chair, Steve Bumbau as treasurer, and Naomi Shelton as secretary.
Thank you, Jim. Could I get a second?
Second.
Excellent. Well, so I will take this to a board roll call vote. Again, I'll start at the top of my screen. Steve Bumbau. Oh, you need
Sorry.
your.
Aye.
Thank you. Leah Crucy.
Aye.
Jim Sandman.
Aye.
Ricardo Ganjam,
Aye.
Naomi Shelton,
Aye.
Saba Breda,
Aye.
and Rick Cruz with an aye. Thank you, as always, appreciative of the support of this board. And let me add my thanks to Ricardo, who has served as our secretary for the last several years, and Steve, who will continue to serve in the treasurer post and finance committee chair, and welcoming Leah and Naomi to board officership. So very excited for the path forward. At this point, we are done with our meeting. We've very heavy on the public hearing, very light on the public meeting votes, at least until we get into next month and December. So I'll ask if there's any new business that anyone wants to raise at this point. All right, then I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn the October 19th, 2020 board meeting.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Last roll call vote of the evening. Ricardo Ganjam,
Aye.
Leah Cruci,
Aye.
Steve Bumbaugh,
Aye.
Saba Breda,
Aye.
Naomi Shelton,
Aye.
Jim Sandman,
Aye.
and aye from me as well. We are adjourned. Thank you, board members. We'll see you at next month's meeting.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.